Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We'll call the August 30th meeting of the State 911 Advisory Board to order. Paul, if you'll please take the roll.
Patrick J. Mallon.
Present.
Chief Scott Howland.
Alicia Fuller, sitting for Chief Howland.
Brenda Bruner.
Present.
Leanne Magowski.
Present.
And Ann Harb.
Present.
Sheriff Ingrid E. Braun.
Present.
Sheriff Corey Honea. Chief Edward Hadfield.
Present.
Chris Herron.
Present.
Chief John Peters.
Present.
Chief Craig Carter. We have a quorum.
Okay. Next order of business is approval of the minutes from the meeting of March 7th, 2018. Are there any corrections? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve. Oh, sorry.
Motion by Chief Peters, second by
Chris Herron, I'll second.
Chris Herron. Do we need to take a roll call vote or just a voice vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Motion carries. Now the meeting of minutes, actually we didn't have a meeting on June the 6th for lack of a quorum, but we do have minutes from the briefings that we did provide. Are there any corrections? Is there a motion to approve?
It needs to be a correction on the spelling of my last name.
I'm sorry?
The spelling of my last name is incorrect.
Okay, we will make that correction. Is there, other than that one correction, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 3, which is a closed session to discuss the third quarter's 911 outages pursuant to Government Code Section 11126E, and we will stand in a short recess. The board members, please go out this door here to our left, and we will hold the meeting outside. Okay. Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order. Closed session, we did not take any action. It was strictly a report, so there was nothing to report out. Next item up is a legislative update, and Mitch will provide that in place of Reggie Salvador, our Legislative and External Affairs Director.
Thanks, Pat. So for the board, first of all, I want to say for all of the members that have been assisting in the process, your efforts are sincerely appreciated in trying to advance our bills that are moving forward now. We're currently waiting for the legislature to take the bill to a floor vote. And for those of you that are not aware, it's a 2/3 vote bill, so we've been getting the message out about the merits of restructuring this program and our fees to all the members of the legislature to encourage their aye vote on our bills so we can restructure our fees from that. I can say from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, our appreciation extends not just to the individual members here, but to all of the personnel in the organizations who've been reaching out to the members, particularly as they've had questions about the impact of this new fee and the maintenance of the old, what we call legacy 911 system, and how we're moving forward to next gen for it. The session ends tomorrow at midnight. Therefore, the legislature has been working into the evening each night this week, and is going to continue to do so both today and tomorrow. And it is our hope that they'll give the 911 sustainment trailer bill a fair hearing and a vote on the floor today or tomorrow, and we'll certainly update the advisory board as soon as we hear more information. So, subject to your questions. That concludes the brief.
Are there any questions? Okay, there were two other pieces of information on your legislative update, slide 4.2. One is a federal legislation, House Resolution 4672, regarding next generation of 911. That was introduced into the House on December 18th of 2017. And then two congressional caucuses, one on next gen 911. I believe, Budge, did you? Where's Budge? Okay, they pushed that meeting out. Okay, we thought we were on board for that. The other one is a natural disaster caucus, which is also pending. Next item up on the agenda is the First Responders Network update. The negotiations with AT&T on a CalNet agreement for FirstNet services and public safety broadband services is progressing. Actually, our next meeting is scheduled early next week. There was an option for agencies, and was clearly being pushed by FirstNet and AT&T to acquire FirstNet services under the NASPO agreement, which is the National Association of State Procurement Officers. We reviewed that, and the difficulty that we saw with NASPO is that the agreements referred to a number of URLs, in essence, web pages, which would tell you which devices were available, what the pricing was, and all the various elements of that contract, which could be changed by the contractor at will. So our concern was that we were being asked to sign into a contract that could be changed without our concurrence. So that's why through the California Department of Technology, we've been pushing to obtain an agreement with AT&T for FirstNet public safety responder services under the CalNet agreement, and all the state agencies, public agencies can piggyback on that and enjoy the leverage of a better pricing than we might be able to get otherwise. So that those negotiations with AT&T are continuing. One of the other elements that we were concerned with as we were going around the state pre-December of the pre-December decision by the governor to opt into the FirstNet program, we listened and we had a number of meetings around the state, and the one common thread that we heard was concerned about coverage that it was in existence today by AT&T. And the strong vocalization by a number of agencies that they would prefer to remain with their present carrier. We have been working with CDT. CDT is the California Department of Technology. They've been working on a CalNet agreement for all mobility services for the basically commercial carrier type service. We've been working with them to develop a public safety component that would require the same technical requirements that we are expecting AT&T to adhere to. Those negotiations should start. We actually have a meeting next week with CDT to go over those technical requirements after some comments back from the commercial industry, and we are hoping to be able to have an agreement for public safety broadband services from other carriers other than the FirstNet service, hopefully by the first of the year. So that's the latest on where we stand with FirstNet services. Any questions? Okay, the next report up is the 911 branch report, and Budge.
All right, so on the slide in front of you and in your briefing binders, this is the list of topics we'll be going over. Please stop me at any time if you have questions or need additional information, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So the first slide shows a graphic representation of our wireless rerouting project, and essentially this project, for those that aren't familiar with it, is we take a look at every cell sector in the state. We make a determination based on transfer rate if that cell sector is going to the correct location, whether it be a PSAP for CHP or a county SO or a police department, and then where should it go? And we look at the transfer rates of those calls that arrive based on the routing that's assigned to the sector of that tower. And if it's above 20% transfer rate, we'll take a look at it with the county coordinator and CHP and make sure that it's going to the correct place. If it's not, then we submit a reroute to the carriers, and then the carriers have to essentially reprogram that cell sector to go to the correct PSAP. It takes them some time, them being the carriers, to make those changes, and then we let it, set for another year, and then we reevaluate. We evaluated last year roughly a little over 300,000 cell sectors, and of those, there was a number that we submitted to the carriers for changes. We had a busy year last year with activity throughout the state, and it took them a little while to make those updates. So they are now all reporting they're 100% complete. We are beginning the process to validate that they are, in fact, 100% complete. So this is good news from the last time when we briefed this out. There were a number of carriers who had not reported back to us that they had completed it. Our ability to go look at this process is limited if they don't apply the updates, because it's, there's no sense in looking at the same data again. So we're going to begin in earnest to take a look at the cell sector routing that's out there. Of course, at any time, a PSAP can contact us and say, look, we think this cell sector is not routing appropriately, and we immediately deal with it at that time. This effort that we're talking about here is above and beyond those, case-by-case basis. So that's where we're at on the cell sector project. We're also making some good headway with the vendor who's helping us automate this process, ECATS, and this is a little bit less manpower intensive. So any questions on the wireless technical routing analysis project? Anything to add from CHP? I know you guys are an active partner in this.
And we appreciate partnership with Cal OES on this effort. It is a heavy lift for everyone that's involved in the process, and a heavy lift to make sure that the carriers are following through and helping us with the changes that need to be made. So thank you for your support.
So at the bottom of this graphic, you'll notice the number of sectors that were submitted for reroute. And like I said, according to the carriers, they're 100% compliant. We're beginning the validation process. So the next graphic talks about our fiscal and operational review. This is where we visit the PSAP and offer them assistance with everything from their customer premise equipment or their call answering equipment, and when their next procurement date is coming, when their refresh cycle is happening, where they're at in their maintenance cycle, what changes we've made in our operations manual, current status of things like Next Gen 911, text to 911, all of that. We also validate all of the trunks, 911 trunks that we're paying for into the PSAP. The equipment that we've actually helped pay for is there and operational. And we do that in our goal is to hit at least 30 PSAPs a quarter. So year to date for 2018, we've completed 72. So you can see we're on pace to far exceed that number for the year. And what we're asking, if there's a PSAP that's not on our schedule now and you want us to come, give us a call and we'll come. It is not a punitive process. It's not the purpose of it. It's intended to be a collaboration between the state and the PSAP. So if you have a new PSAP manager, it'd probably be a good idea to engage with us, because we can be very helpful to get them up to speed on what they need to do and how the state can help them. So this is where we're at for the year, and they are very busy. We have 4 advisors that are assigned to throughout the state, and their schedule is pretty aggressive. Any questions on that?
Budge, any trends that you'd like to report out on the forest side of the household?
So we had a fairly large turnover on my team. All 4 advisors changed within the last 2 years. So it took some time to get those new folks up to speed. But the good news is we were able to provide the guidance to them and kind of level set what we needed them to do. The feedback we're getting from the PSAPs is very appreciative that when we go and help, because that's really what we're there for. So we've gotten some really positive feedback, and The questions and some of the slides that are coming up later, what is the state doing with GIS? What is the state doing with Next Gen 911? What is the state doing with text to 911? What is the state doing to increase location accuracy? Those are all questions that are right on the front of their mind. So that blends a couple of portions of my team, because I have a technical team. Ryan Sunahara heads that team up. They're the ones that really have to answer a lot of those questions. So I'm having to cross-train my PSAP advisors, who typically are just focused on the call answering piece, to make sure that they have that data available. So that's something that we're seeing as an outcome of that I've got to make sure that our team is trained up with those kind of strategic level questions that are being asked of them. Most of the other detailed questions on how do I replace my CPE, what's involved in the contract, they've got all that down. There's no problem. So there's been a lot of positive feedback.
Just a quick comment on that, Budge. I know my PSAP just went through the update process and has all the equipment installed, and I can say from our experience, we congratulate your team on the assistance they provided us. It was a very clear and much easier process than we've had in the past, so congratulations on that.
All right. Good job. You hear that, Paul? I did. All right. Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate that, Chief. And that's the goal. And we know we can get better, and that's what we're really striving to do. So each one of these that each time we engage with the PSAP, we can just get a little bit better in this process. So this next graphic gives a sense of number of CPE replacements that we've completed year to date. So you'll see a couple of numbers in this graphic are interesting, and you might want to know why the numbers are low. 2017, that 54 number, we went about 6 months in that year without a contract in place as we were in the procurement process, so that's why that number dipped a little low. We expect 2018 to be a big year. We have many active CPE installation system acceptance processes in motion now, so we think that's going to be a big year. We also have some very large PSAPs that are in this process. LA, CHP, and others who are very large, and so not only are there going to be quite a few this year, but we anticipate this year and into next fiscal year, the funding allocated to CPE replacement is going to be significant. And so that's one of the things we're planning for in our budgetary process. All right, any questions on that? This graphic has not changed that much since the last advisory board. We still have a couple of active NG911 projects. The data we've gathered from those projects has been invaluable as we plan for the implementation of Next Gen 911 statewide. One of those is in the northern area of the state. There's 36 PSAPs involved in that project, and the other one is Pasadena Ring, and there's 8 PSAPs involved in that project. Each one of them is running into some challenges with the PUC regulatory process and the requirement for tariffs, and how do we connect the selective routers across boundaries and traditional 911. And so it was once we initiated these 2 projects and we got clarification from the PUC that caused us to go out with this current RFP effort that we're working on to deploy Next Gen 911, knowing that we need to link up a contract process with a tariff process. 911 services in California must be tariffed. And so we've begun work, that number 3 bullet up there, on a Next Gen 911 RFP. I'll show you an overview in a couple slides as to what our Next Gen 911 plan is. However, the prime, which is the most important of the 5 that we're going to be building out, we released a pre-solicitation on July 20th, and we had a number of vendors respond back to us with comments on that pre-solicitation. So you can think of it kind of like a draft. It's not the procurement term, but it's basically what it was. And it gave us an opportunity to get direct feedback from the vendors without being in that very procurement process. We got some very, and DT has completed theirs. It's in legal review, and then of course there's some other funding pieces we have to make sure that are in place so that we can implement that. But we're ready to go once we're said hit the road. There have been hundreds and hundreds of man-hours that have gone into this RFP. And even the feedback we got from the vendor community on the draft was that it was one of the best that they've seen. And that was our draft. So we're just going to get even that much better. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, it is still available on the eProcure site. And if you want the direct link, I'm happy to send it to you. And that's the draft version, which is public. We can't discuss the other one until it becomes public. So that's where we're at. Text to 911, we were able to extend that contract, so we have the ability now to move forward with text to 911. There are a number of PSAPs who wanted an integrated solution and the ability to transfer from, there are 2 TCC providers, Text Control Center providers. And at one point, there was a limitation of being able to transfer from one to the other. That test has been completed, and you can now do that. The reason why I mention that is because now there are a number of PSAPs out there who want an integrated solution and are coming to the state and saying, please do this for us. And we went out to get a cost analysis of what that would cost, and the price tag was shocking. So we updated our operations manual, put in there some clear guidance on what we, the state, are willing to reimburse, and we're in negotiations right now with the vendor community to make sure they can support that. We may come back to you if we have some challenges there and ask for your help in talking with them to come to an agreement on what is a reasonable and fair way to do this for the state. So that's where we are with text, and more detailed information on text will be provided by the County Coordinator Task Force. All right, no questions? So the next gen slides,
I did have a question.
Yes.
So if a PSAP had opted for the web version or the web option for text to 911, and now the integrated solution is available, are they able to change, or is there a waiting period before they can make that decision?
So that's a good question. So we would like for them to wait, because when I roll out Prime, I will be able to provide them an integrated solution much faster and at a lower cost. However, if there's some burning reason to do it sooner than later, we could talk one-on-one with them and figure that out. Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
All right, so Next Gen 911, I was hoping by today to have those bottom 2 puzzle pieces snapped in. They are not. So we've done a lot of work and research on the technology, the collaboration and feedback we've had from the PSAP community through the regional task force has been amazing. The LRPC will give an update on that. Funding, we think we've solved the problem and presented a very nice solution, and we're hoping for the support of the legislature on that. And I just gave you an update on the procurement. We're ready to plug that piece in once that nice green one gets snapped into place. So we're moving forward. There has been a couple of changes based on feedback we've received both from PSAPs, the regional task force, and the vendor community that I do want to run through at kind of a high level for you. The procurement plan has not changed. We will have a tariff. We will competitively select the vendor to build this service out for us, and we'll activate that service through a tariff. And that's essentially what this slide shows. The regions in the state have not changed. There are 4 regions, and then there's a prime. The one important thing to remember is that prime is connected to every single PSAP. So if you're a PSAP manager or you're responsible for a PSAP, you will have 2 connections into your PSAP at a minimum. One from the prime, one from the region. And then for redundancy purposes, you'll have additional, and I have some slides on that. The deployment timeline that I show on this graphic, it's very important to realize that all 4 puzzle pieces are snapped in place on this graphic. And they did that on purpose. Because once that happens, this timeline becomes a reality. If something slips, either in funding or procurement, then we have to adjust these timelines. Any questions on that? All right. This next graphic is a change from what I had presented the last time that we met. in discussing the advantages of having a prime NG core service provider, or a prime next-gen 911 core service provider, what we're seeing in other states is if they have a single vendor providing NG core services and something goes wrong with that vendor. Now, keep in mind, that's a very low likelihood. This is 99.99% reliable, meaning roughly 6 minutes a month of outage, which you think is pretty small until you are calling 911 in that 6 minutes. Then it becomes very important. So we have designed a network that is theoretically closer to 100% reliable by laying two 99.999% networks on top of each other. The likelihood of both of them going down at the same time, you get to the theoretical 100% at that point. And that's why we've done it this way. It also gives us the opportunity at the prime, since they are connected to every public safety answering point, we can take advantage of that fact for statewide deployment type things. Text to 911, for example. And we have a number of small providers, small local exchange carriers that are out there. There's about 14 of them. We have voice over IP providers, so you can think of your Comcast and Cox Cable and all those folks. And those are the ones that we want to bring into the prime and allow them to aggregate or receive those 911 calls and deliver them all the way to the public safety answering point. That gets us an active aggregation service in the prime. In the event when we go to the next step, when we start building out the regions and there's a problem, we have redundancy not only in core service, but in aggregation as well. Because if something was to go wrong in aggregation in a region, I have the infrastructure already in place, and very quickly I can transition those services. So that's the big change in this graphic. The wireless providers, the four big ones, T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon, will be aggregated regionally along with the big wireline providers, AT&T and Frontier, and there'll be four of those networks. That's this graphic here, those four that you see on that chart. And then they'll be delivered to the PSAP. So this is our updated design, and we've spent a lot of time and effort outlining the requirements of the prime core service provider and how they're going to serve as the sort of data keeper for integration, I guess you could say, as well as policy routing, GIS, and connection to the PSAP. And all that is built into that prime RFP that we put out there. So this is our plan moving forward. There'll be tariffs activated for each of these services, and it's a slight change from what we had shown you before. So any questions to that? I know there was a lot of technical stuff, but
But you might also want to share with the board the issue with CapsNet?
Yeah, thank you, Pat. So across the top of this diagram, coming out of the prime, you see this yellow cloud here called CapsNet that comes down. What we're learning through these recent disasters is that when a fiber backbone burns up or gets destroyed in a disaster, there are typically multiple carriers in the same physical piece of fiber. So even though I do all this work and design two different carriers into your center, some point before they connect to you, they're in the same physical piece of wire that goes across the air and gets burned up, which means your network, your PSAP is no longer connected to the network. That's a huge problem. Unfortunately, this is much more prevalent in the rural areas than in the urban areas. So that's where this CapsNet comes in. CapsNet is a statewide microwave backbone. It consists of about 300 sites. Our plan is to build that out and connect it to every PSAP. So that way it's a completely independent IP path into the PSAP that will remain active even if the physical hardwire one becomes subject to a fire or a disaster or a backhoe, or squirrels in some cases, as we've had overhead fiber chewed up by squirrels. I'm not making that up. So that would provide a redundant path into the PSAP. We are, assuming resources are provided, we're 3 to 5 years away from that being fully deployed. depending on how the deployment goes. We will attempt to prioritize those PSAPs that it makes more sense to put them in earlier. Okay. The funding plan, I think Pat and Mitch spoke to this really well, and we've talked about it quite a bit. If you do have any questions at all about the legislation, where it's at, and the various support that we've had on this, please reach out to us, and we'll share with you any information we have. All right, any questions on that? So there's been a lot of conversation on how will this funding affect the PSAP. So if approved, good news for all. If not approved, we really have a lot of work to do. We really do. We've looked at the projections, and you know, it's this fiscal year that ends in July of 2019 that we're in trouble for if we don't have the funding. So we, Cal OES, and the leadership of Cal OES, based on feedback from Department of Finance and our own budget folks, are going to have to come up with some ways to solve this problem and then have a conversation on how we move forward if the funding is not provided. And obviously, the activities associated with Next Gen 911 become much more challenging if the funding is not there. So this graphic, I'm not going to say a lot on this. The LRPC is going to give you a full brief out on what happened at the regional task force. We conducted 4 of them, so each of the 4 regions met. From the state's perspective, our goal was to help the regions understand what our plan was and really to get feedback to make sure what we were doing aligned with what they needed operationally, and help us to identify where some of the gaps are. And it was successful. They gave us a lot of feedback. We have some gaps that we need to address moving forward, and we're definitely doing that, and we're going to continue to engage in these conversations. If you are interested in hosting one of these regional meetings in your area, in your region, let us know. We're looking for locations to have them at. And for CHP, we would like some participation. If you can reach out to leadership to see if you could participate in these meetings, that would be we would definitely appreciate that.
Yes, we are definitely looking at participants in at least one of the regions.
Okay.
Very shortly.
That'll be good. And if there are other large agencies or agencies that have a unique perspective that you think we might have overlooked, please let us know. The point of this process is to get a good, solid working group together that can provide us some feedback on where we're headed. Okay, with that, I'll entertain any questions on stuff that that you were expecting an update on and I may have overlooked.
Okay, thank you, Budge.
Wait,
Okay, next up.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I was just giving you the,
All right.
wow, you got off easy.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Long Range Planning Committee report by Chris Herron, please.
So although my name is on the slide, because we didn't have a quorum at the last meeting, we weren't able to take some action that was necessary, so maybe I'll defer to Hanan momentarily.
Can I nominate Chris Herron as the chairman of the Long Range Planning Committee?
I'd like to second
Second.
that.
And
Yeah.
so just for a point of clarification, Charlie Cullen was the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. He's no longer on the advisory board, so we do need the board to nominate and approve a new chair, and I guess happy to do so.
Was agendized at the last meeting, not for this one. Carried over to this one.
Excuse me. We do have a motion and a second to nominate Chris Herron to be the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. Should we call for a roll call vote or just? Okay, please call a roll call vote.
Alicia Fuller,
Aye.
Brenda Bruder,
Aye.
Leanne McGusty,
Aye.
Ann Hart,
Aye.
Sheriff Ingrid Braun,
Aye.
Chief Edward Hatfield,
Aye.
Chief John Peters,
Aye.
The motion is approved unanimously. So Chris, you're on the spot again.
All right, I'll give a report. So thank you. Just one other point for everyone, in case there's any questions or discussion. Because we've had so much turnover, we do have new membership on the LRPC, so I just want to go over that with everyone. And apologies, since we just met this morning, we don't have a slide available for you, but we'll certainly get this information on a slide for you in the next meeting, or I can send this out to you as well if you're interested. In terms of the makeup and membership of the advisory board, I'm representing the CFCA, the Fire Chiefs Association. Also, Joe Thewson, who's the manager and perhaps director up at Sac Regional Fire, is another representative appointed, or that we're recommending be appointed today to represent fire chiefs. We have Alicia Fuller from CHP, Chuck Burdan from APCO, Cheryl Lesage, who's not here today, from the Police Chiefs Association, Leanne Magowski and Hanan Harb from NENA. And am I missing anyone? Okay, that should be it. So Sheriff, we did speak about this at a previous meeting. Right now, there's no one specifically from the Sheriff's Association, so certainly as an option for you guys to appoint someone to the LRPC. Leanne did note, we do have several people who work for sheriff's departments. They just happen to be representing other organizations. Yeah, we actually have three people on the LRPC who work for sheriff's departments, but they are representing NENA and APCO. Any questions or discussion about the membership of the LRPC?
No, I will connect up with Cal Sheriffs and see if they'd like to recommend somebody to that.
Okay, thank you. With that, I just did want to, because last meeting we did not have a quorum, I want to look back. So as Budge talked about, the next-gen task forces were created, and those are groups that are working under the LRPC. And as he said, it's really an opportunity for the state to get feedback from the PSAP community as they embark on the next-gen project, if you will. We have over 30 PSAPs represented, so it's a great cross-section. All the regions, as you saw, they all met here within about the last month. And we received, at our meeting this morning, we received a report from each of the representatives from each of the region about their first meeting. Actually, a lot of really, really good discussion, a lot of good feedback coming from the state. One of the, I think, interesting notes that came up was GIS and how important, it came up in each of the four regions, how important GIS was going to be with the implementation of NextGen, and really the need that exists in the PSAP community for some support with regard to GIS. And so, the state recognizes that, and what we decided this morning was to create a work group or task force, also working under the LRPC, of GIS experts, if you will, from across the state to, again, advise us and advise the state with specific thought to GIS as NextGen is implemented. So where that discussion ended was that a to-be-determined person from the state office and I are going to work on putting together a charter for a GIS work group or task force. We're going to present that to the LRPC at our next meeting, as well as have a further discussion at our next meeting about soliciting membership for that task force. So if you have any ideas or know of somebody that you definitely want us to reach out to, for those of us on the board and in the audience, please feel free to get a message to either myself or a member of the State 911 office, because we'll be working on that. And then we'll plan to have an updated report to you at the next meeting on that work group. In terms of other updates, honestly, that is and was the biggest item. We received some branch updates as well as an update on text to 911, but you'll get more information on that at the county coordinator update. We also talked quite a bit about the NENA, it's called the Mission Critical training event, sort of a conference. It's going to be held, the next one is going to be held March of next year. And at the last couple of NENA events, the LRPC has led some discussion panels, and they've, I think, gone over really well and were well attended, some good information. So we talked about doing that again in March, as well as having some specific discussions or trainings as it relates to FirstNet and the difference between FirstNet and Next Gen 911. Another item that came out of the task forces was that a lot of members of PSAPs are confused by that and didn't realize that these are really two separate projects being moved forward. So good discussion, I think, this morning about that, and some good plans that are underway for presenting some information at NENA. And so if you're not familiar with it, that NENA event really ends up, what's the attendance now, 400 or 500 people?
Usually about
Okay,
387
380,
to
sorry.
423.
There you go. So, there you go. But 400 or so, thank you, Hanan, 400 or so PSAP representatives all in one place for one event each year. It really is a great opportunity for us and the state to present information to a good portion of representatives. Last thing I'll mention is we talked about it because this also came up from the task forces, is just that need for educating members of our community. And the reality is, whether it's this meeting, whether it's the NENA event, it's typically the same groups. Those of us who are engaged are watching this, attending this, going to the trainings. And it's really all of our responsibilities, I think, to reach out. And I said earlier, bring a friend. So the next time that you're going to attend a 911 training or a 911 meeting, reach out and find someone in your region or in your neighborhood who isn't engaged, because we need everyone at the table as these big projects get implemented over the next couple of years. So with that, that's the LRPC report.
Thank you, Chris. Next item up is the County Coordinator Task Force report. Ella Sotelo.
Thank you. Hi, I'm here to report the progress of text for Cal OES, and the deployed PSAPs, which means all 4 carriers have been deployed, was 30 since the last meeting, and they have 13 PSAPs have signed up to receive text, which I assume at this point is web-based. I'm not sure, but we did have an addition of 13. And the second item is that we did test successfully between a web-based solution and a integrated solution. That was between Comtech, web-based at CHP Chico, and Butte County Sheriff's. That had been a roadblock for a while to be able to transfer successfully between a web-based solution and an integrated solution. And we had to, at this point, choose Butte because they're the only ones that are truly integrated right now. But that was a successful test, so that overcame a roadblock that's been in place for a while. Chapter 10 of the operations manual was updated to include the information about the $12,000 funding that's available for folks that are interested in integrated text. And that was, if you have over 20 positions, it's viewed as an exception to the rule, and that'll be treated individually. And that has to be discussed with the state on what your actual funding amount will be. And last, we've continued with the less than 1% of total call volume that are text. A lot of folks initially, when we first started text, were afraid of being buried because we were just buried with wireless. And so they were like, not text, not text. But it's turned out, and we have data to support that position now that it has continued over the last 3 years to be less than 1% of the total call volume. Okay, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item up on the agenda is upcoming State 911 Advisory Boards. The next one is December 6th, 2018. Are there any board requests for matters to be placed on the agenda? Going once, going twice. Now open for public comment. I believe we have one request for a comment from Mr. Joseph Wassel. He's the CIO for the Department of Defense.
A little bit lower on the food chain than the CIO for the Department of Defense, but a couple levels below that. But it did sound terrific. Or maybe, I don't know, I haven't seen the news, so I don't know. So I am Joe Wassel from DOD, and I thank the board for the opportunity to say a couple words. I know I've got about 3 minutes, and I think I can come in under that. The department, I also chair a public safety communications working group in the department, and the department is waking up to its roles and responsibilities for public safety across the nation. We have firefighters, police, and EMS inside our camps, post stations, and bases all across the United States to the tune of about 150,000. And then when you add the National Guard and something called Fifth Army under Comm, we have about 700,000 first responder entities that will fill sandbags. They'll stand on the corner to help sheriff's departments during riots. And most recently, our thoughts and prayers are with the state of California, with the victims and the first responders fighting these forest fires you've got going on right now. Typically, the National Guard is the one you think about for those fires, but we actually activated 233 soldiers from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington. That's on your Mendocino complex fire. So we're just proud to be part of the team, and in that light and in that same kind of extreme partnership, running into a fire side by side, DOD personnel and California and other folks running in to protect life, limb, and property, we are waking up to our roles and responsibilities in 911. As it turns out, we may be the largest provider of 911 services in the country, not by call volume, but by call center. We are estimating somewhere between 500 and 750 call centers across the United States in our installations. And so we take this next generation very, very seriously. Next Generation 911, which is the purpose of this whole get-together, is important. And so I've been having great meetings with Cal OES, very productive meetings. And I just wanted to say that and kind of get it on the record that, we're not just mission partners, we're mission neighbors here in your state. You're our host, and we want to be good partners within your state. So I have a funding situation going on right now as well with the actual CIO of the department and the services, and are talking about public safety communications. And we've got a large ask for in the tens of millions of dollars to get the department out of the E911 business and get from copper to the cloud into the next gen. Just wanted to let you know that we're here. We appreciate your leadership on Next Gen 911, and we're going to be good partners as we go forward. So as we learn about things in the state of California, which is really a very forward-leaning state for Next Gen, we've got 49 other states, 5 territories in the District of Columbia to think about as well. But if we can get it done here in the largest state, we can use it as a model for everything else. So thank you for your partnership. We're here. We're going to potentially, we've offered to be part of some of your regional task force, trying to get some of our leadership and our operators from our installations to partner and share information as we tackle the GIS inside our fence lines and sharing that information. So there's a lot to be done. Just want to let you know that we're here. We're glad to be here, and thank you for the partnership.
Thank you. Paul, do we have any other requests for comment? Okay. Then with that, we'll call the conclusion of the advisory board meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all.